He's got to just be resolution company. So it's like that's not necessarily bad, but like the machinations about this is kind of, I think we have to be a little bit skeptical about everything. It really does require looking at it line by line.
Yeah. I think we talked about the last two questions, Chris. Oh yeah, and we did talk about the indemnity fund too, to cover claims against DREPs and CC members.
I really love the idea of a standardized smart contract for this, because depending on which MBO is going to do the budget process, they all could use the same contract in a way, or same process that would be within the smart contract. So if you mention a specific hash of a smart contract that you could use to, I'm just throwing ideas.
Yeah. I mean, I think it makes sense to solidify a budget definition process in the Constitution, but not an administer. Whoever proposes the budget should propose the administer, right? Not necessarily if they're not the administer, it should be in the proposal who's going to administer it. That way it kind of keeps that part fluid.
Yep. I mean, if I were a DREP, which I'm not going to be, if anything came across that had any of these kind of holes, I'm going to want to see who's going to handle every possible aspect of this. And if those things aren't well defined, it's a no for me, dog. And it's not personal. But then, you take some of those elements out and you strap those onto the Constitution as constitutional elements. I just don't know that that's a feasible path.
Oh. All right.
There's something missing in the section 1. It says, in order to participate in governance action, owner of ADA may register as a DREP and directly vote on such governance action, or may delegate their voting right to other registered DREPs who shall vote on their behalf, but there's no mention of the two voting options, no confidence and auto abstain.
Yeah.
I mean, aren't you supposed to be able to vote as an ADA holder? That's not mentioned.
Yeah, it's in section 2.
Yeah, section 2.
Oh, okay. Well, but that's the going through that step of registering as a DREP. I thought there was always going to be the possibility to just vote, if you've got ADA in your wallet.
Well, you can if you register as a DREP.
You need to basically put a 500 ADA deposit down if you were to vote. Otherwise, you have voting power.
Yeah, that's the thing, because those two automated DREPs, well, I shouldn't say DREPs, but they used to be called predefined DREPs, and they changed the wording for voting options. But when this constitution was originally made, it was called predefined DREP. So the section 1 was all right, but then they changed the name for voting options. So I believe we should modify the section 1 as well, just to include those two automated voting options.
What are we looking at right now? Sorry, I'm late.
That's okay. I was eating.
You're muted, Kyle.
That's the draft into the Constitution, yeah.
Yeah, if anybody wants to pull up this document, it's 39 pages long, at least the PDF that I have. The link is in the description on YouTube. And I think we tweeted, I put it in the link for the tweet from Drip Drops earlier too. So if you want to pull it up, pull it up.
Chris, are you capturing all these notes?
No, but, well, on video, yes.
All right. Okay. I think we keep moving on.
I mean, for the the newcomers to the space, I just can't see them getting their heads around this.
No, and honestly, I don't think that as we grow and hit product market fit, most volume isn't gonna even need to understand this or want to understand this. It's gonna be the low level participants, the people building businesses on here, that are probably gonna have the most, concern, stake for voting. I think they're your everyday user. Right now, we've got a large community that wants to be involved in governance, but I mean, really, who is qualified to be voting on parameters, for the chain? Really, it's a huge nuanced discussion with probably a very small subset of users, even being, having the technical background to kind of understand what they're even voting on, or what the issues really mean and imply.
Because
According to this, the guy with the most data is the one that's qualified.
Well, yeah, but it's not really the guy with the most data. That guy with the most data is going to be delegated to a DREP most likely. He's not going to be in there saying, "Oh, we need to fucking block guys," or tweak K to this, or
reasonable.
Yeah, I think for the most part this is going to be a DREPs game.
But I mean, we've got like, was it? I think I saw 300 DREPs or whatever it is. I don't know if it's gone up since then.
Yes.
Voting on governance over like a what were we 12 billion market cap network. So it seems like a big deal, and not that many people.
I mean, yeah, but you look at the DREPs, there's like 450 of them that registered. What, maybe 60 or 70 voted on the first action so far. So there's not a huge participation of DREPs. And when you look at on-chain registrations, half these goofballs put Twitter profiles and LinkedIn profiles as their metadata URL. It's like, okay, here we go.
Shit.
That was that UI sucks. The UX sucks.
Now, was that donated by somebody, or did the community end up paying for that?
For what? GovTools?
This is a preemptive question.
You
But
know
yeah,
the fucking answer to that.
what was the price tag?
Well, the community didn't pay for it, okay? IO and Emergo paid for that out of the development fund or whatever. That's not community money. I don't, to my knowledge, right now at least. But what it is, it's an indicator of how we can see our money is going to be spent. Right? It's an absolute shit show for you guys who
Money
don't.
well spent, guys.
Yeah.
No, I can tell you that going through that experience just as an intellectual experiment was awful. And your average user is not going to go through that just to participate in governance. Even if you don't have a lot of ADA, even if it makes more sense to delegate it to a DREP, you and your DREP are never going to see eye to eye on every single subject. So they're never going to vote 100% in your favor. With that being said, if you want to take control of the voting power or the ADA that you have, registering as your own DREP and participating is highly encouraged. But the issue is getting to that point. It's a pain in the ass. It's not easy to use for an average user. No way. Eternal makes it pretty easy, but if you go through GovTool,
I mean, crypto UX is already horrible as it is, and this muddies the hell out of it, for an average regular user.
Yeah.
I would like to keep the regular everyday user as far away from this shit as possible.
but it is V1 too. I mean,
Sure.
you have to consider that as well. I'm sure it will get more refined and more user friendly as time goes on. I ultimately, I mean, that's what happened to staking. Staking became a lot easier to participate in as time went on, with various advancements. So I think the same thing will happen with voting as well.
You seen that last question? I would simply remove that from every workshops.
Yep.
It doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense. I can get rid of my DREP in one epic.
There
Right.
you go. I can spin up a new DREP like the snap of a finger with 8 lines of code and just tell my delegators, because the ledger doesn't make the distinctions between the owner and its DREP ID.
No, and
So-
if DREP was strictly based off of delegation, not using your own ADA, that would be one thing. But for DREPs that are using their own ADA, how could you ever terminate their ability to vote in the ecosystem? You know, or they'd have to just respin a new DREP.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. Removal of that last one would be it only makes sense. Your term limit is as long as you're holding ADA.
Well, no, right now there's a hard bake expiry of 20 epochs, I think, right? If you don't vote as a DREP within
Yeah,
20,
if you're inactive, yeah.
yeah, but a term limit for DREP, what does that mean? Like you just wipe like a term limit for SPOs, you just wipe everybody's stake to 0 every. No, because what that does is that creates arbitrary and fucked up more UX requirements on your users to redelegate after they've already did.
Yeah, we know that we already know that doesn't work because retired pools still have stake in them.
Well, yeah, users don't want to do. They want to delegate this once. Like the fact that we're even making users delegate, I get the reasoning why, but it's like it's another UX crapshoot, right? Like,
yeah, oh yeah.
Stake pools doesn't get that anymore. I just got confirmation. When you retire your stake pool, there's a RIP certificate. Every delegations, you lose them.
Right, but what happens to the ADA holders? They're just unstaked at
They're
that point.
Yeah, that's one of my concern, because if you put a term limit and after a while you keep losing your delegation, you're just going to end up putting that to auto abstain, and you would be done with it.
Right,
Yeah,
and whose responsibility is it when, even if you're, say you're staked to a pool, that pool retires and then all of a sudden you're unstaked? Whose responsibility is it for the outreach to the ADA holders to say, hey, you have to move your stake? It's not going to be the retired pool. They're gone.
well, in the context of DREPs, well, there is no notification in the context of. I mean, I guess some people are working on some shit, but it's more.
But have a push notification. And
well, here's the fucking deal: if you unstake people's voting power without their knowledge, they're going to come back and they're going to have to redelegate to get their staking rewards. It's not like they're going to lose their rewards, so that's not the end of the world. It'd be, if they were losing rewards the whole time, it would be a big problem. But your rewards still stack even if you're not staked to a DREP. You just have to be staked, or at least chain +1, right? You have to be staked to a DREP to actually withdraw your rewards. So yeah, I mean, term limits though, that could be interesting way to balance power if you look at it alternatively. Okay, we're gonna have an interesting race. GovTools is fucking up, right? Because they're displaying DREPs in some, I don't know what order, but right, by the way they display them, it's giving preference to certain DREPs, just like kind of the wallets did early on, right?
And just like how stake pools did.
Right. Right. That's what I mean.
I don't know if that's a good idea.
Which one?
Saying that you almost level the field, because if you have a bad actor that's well coordinated and well organized to just respin their DREP, get their delegation back up and running, you never give the opportunity for good actors to build up and get to that point to combat it. So for example, if Binance came in and decided they were going to be a DREP, who the fuck is going to go compete with them? It's going to take a while. We know we want good people voting on our behalf rather than the commercial behalf. DREPs, or rather Binance, going to vote for whatever's in their best interest. That may not necessarily be in the best interest of everybody else, where we need to combat that type of vote. It's a hypothetical situation, but if you rotate that out and all of a sudden balance everyone to 0, Binance is going to spin back up immediately.
I see what you're getting at, but here's the flaw in that logic. The term limit would be discrete per DREP. It wouldn't be like, at this date, everybody gets reset. Every DREP would have their own term limit based on when they.
Yeah, but if you space them out like that, you have a different type of logistic problem too.
No, yeah, you can have a very well organized bad actor move very quickly. Yeah, I get what you're saying.
That's near impossible to stop.
Yeah, I mean, for now, I would probably do the REAP rules for when they unregister, for example. That I would do it. But term limits,
Yeah.
it's just, it doesn't sound right.
I think if they're not voting in 20 epochs, that's your term limit. You're inactive. You clearly don't give a shit.
No, and not for inactivity. That's the difference. For inactivity, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But for when you unregister, like you want to get your deposit back and stop being a DREP, then I would do this.
So how does the expiry work now for an activity? If I don't vote for 20 epochs, does that just mean I can't vote, or I've got to?
No. Well, yeah, you can still vote. You and your stake will be considered for future votes as abstain, and as soon as you vote on something, you reactivate right away for the next calculation on the epoch boundary.
Okay. So if I don't vote, then it's just like I didn't vote. But if 20 epochs happen of me not voting, then all my delegated stake votes auto abstain, basically moving forward. Is that how that works?
If you don't vote while you're active, you will be seen as a passive no by the system, even if you don't vote. And when you turn inactive, then you will be calculated as abstain, unless you vote again.
Okay.
Oh wow.
Okay, so there's no redistribution or nullification of.
And as it is right now, if I deregister and register again, I keep my stake. Because there's no REAP rules on DREPs right now. We're discussing this as we speak.
What if you have a mega DREP that just goes inactive for 20 epochs? They're voting no on everything. A passive no.
Then it's statu quo. No, which is all right in a way, because everybody see this as something bad, but as it is right now, nothing changed and everything goes fine. I mean,
That's true. Yeah.
there's legitimacy into a no vote as well. It's not necessarily a vector of attack. It's just that people don't want anything to change.
Mm.
But they can't purchase voting rights.
What do you guys think about compensation for DREPs? Do you think they should be paid, or should it be a free gig?
Well, when you say paid, it doesn't have to be money. Compensated is,
I would hate to see. I think what I don't like about that is, from conversations I've heard, everybody is seemingly okay with the idea that, hey, I want to pay this guy to sponsor me because I know he knows how to talk my interests, right? And I get that. When I first heard that, I was kind of disturbed.
Lobbying at this point.
It sounds like lobbying, but at the same time, it's like, dude, I've got 10 million ADA here, and I'm working on, this niche market, and I want you to just focus on that for me and vote on that. And I don't see anything wrong with that, right? Because that's a valid situation, hypothetical situation. But then, they get to double dip. Like I don't know, like right now it's like 360 something DREPs, and how do we know this is not just overly enthusiastic participation, and that at a certain point it fades away?
Well,
I mean, in normal politics, people, they get paid, so
a lot.
What's happening here now with DREPs, I presume, is there's a lot of people looking at this like the SPOs in the early days. Like, we had a tremendous opportunity when we started stake pools, right? We were in at the right time, and we were able to create businesses. And so I think that a lot of people are thinking that DREPs are going to be compensated, at least some portion of those, right? The top X or whatever that may be. And so I think a lot of people are positioned.
What's going to happen, though, it's going to very quickly have a top few, just like it did with stake pools. You had a top, tier, like you get in any industry, footballers, whatever. You know, you have your elite select top end, and that's
Right.
what you can get with DREPs, really.
Well, with SPOs, we knew we were going to get paid. I just predict that everybody who's throwing their hat in the DREP ring is thinking that maybe that's going to be a
It
financial.
might be a future paid gig.
Yep.
Well, I don't necessarily disagree with it as much as I would like to see it not be a paid gig. But if people are putting their time and effort into something, they should be compensated for it. And we've had a similar question arise within our own government when they were creating the presidential seat. It was the decision whether that was going to be a paid gig or not. And they decided that it should be a paid gig to avoid just rich people from running for presidency, even though that's all we've ever had was rich people running for presidency anyway. So I don't know if it actually solves the problem that
Ryan
You should need a legit mandate for that, because, like, if you think in normal politics, it's rotating every year. You got to vote.
That's
for
true. Yeah.
reps and stuff. So
Well, Ryan says tips only.
it
in my
does keep rolling. So you may get career D-reps if they're good enough, I guess.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
good
Of
politics.
course.
But then you get people who are just passionate about it and they just want to do
So-
the right thing and they know the right direction for where.
Ryan brings up an interesting point. He says tips only, in my honest.
Well, Josh doesn't tip anybody.
No.
Well, but what's the difference between a tip and a bribe?
Like, someone knew me very well. Yeah, we don't really. I do tip a bit over here, but yeah, no. Typically, I'm English. We do not. Tip.
It's customs, it depends on where you live.
So yeah, tip sounds very subjective as well. Like,
Just
you
the
can't,
tip.
if you're doing it, you can't rely. It needs to be a fixed amount. People
Yeah.
need to know what's coming in. You can't just have, I had a bad month this month because there was nothing to vote on or whatever. Or,
And it's
my tips are low because
it's open to an interesting. It opens up interesting situation where,
and then it comes
could be a bribe.
Well, people are bribed in politics as well. You're like
Well,
lobbying.
of course, but the goal here is to build a better system.
Yeah, well, that's what I mean. So
I think there's something worth mentioning here. I mentioned it in the workshop as well. I'm all right with it for as long as I cannot cheat the system, because it highly depends on how do you want to pay them as well. Because if I can find a way to cheat it, I will cheat it. Right?
It's good to know, Mike.
Oh yeah, I mean, what hacking, right? I'm not a bad guy, but if it depends on how you implement this. If there's a way to cheat it, you can be 100% sure.
Someone will
Yeah.
do it.
Yeah, just to prove that it can be done.
Exactly. For no other purpose but that.
yeah, it can be ethically done.
But having heard this from Mike, I'm only going to play poker with you online.
For what it's worth, whatever Mike gets, he's going to split with me. So he's only
Wow.
halfway cheating.
Because he's only making half the money he should have.
Yeah, I'll give the money back to the treasury.
That's what they all say.
So do SOs, we're looking at section 1 here. So SBOs should have a specific role in improving critical on-chain governance actions, which require additional oversight and independence. And that sounds new to me. Is that just me?
Yeah, I mean, and again, these are things that are not enforceable. Like operators of the nodes that they should participate in hard forks because they're running the nodes. Blah 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 blah. So what if they don't? And by process of attrition, eventually they'll be running software that's so old it won't be producing blocks anyway. So what difference does it make?
Well, I mean, we've initiated hard forks anyways, right? Like, as a consensus as a community. It's just kind of how it's been
You'll
done.
need to keep updating. Yeah. So, but I mean, just because you're there, look, I mean, I'm still here for some reason, but
I would replace shall by may in this paragraph section.
Yeah.
yeah. But, okay. Yeah. Changes the whole dynamic of the sentence, really. So yeah, all right.
I tell you that this whole process has kind of convinced me. I think it'd be easier to set up a stake pool, and then I can vote whenever, on anything, and I don't have to deal with thinking about DREPs.
A few hours.
Scroll down, Chris. I want to see section 3 because that's kind of where I fall. Owners of ADA who are both DREPs and SPOs shall either refrain from voting in on-chain governance actions in both capacities, or shall publicly disclose that they are participating in on-chain governance actions in both such capacities prior to exercising any on-chain governance rights.
Sounds like an arse ache.
So that might have to change that to a may as well.
Well, then why have it at all then?
You can't fucking enforce that. How are you going to enforce that? Number one.
You can't enforce it. If you do it, what's the consequences? There's no consequences of
well, no. But yeah. What is the
anyway?
Is the consequences, Mike? Any governance proposal I submit in the future is unconstitutional because I'm participating in both capacities and doing something against. You see what I'm saying? If I'm doing something that's against the Constitution in one capacity, does that make all my shit fucked? Right?
Yeah, but how do you know? How do you know? If I can correlate your identity with your DREP ID, which can be totally private, how can I presume that you are this person who votes for your governance action as well as voting with your SPO keys as well? I mean,
what about this? Would voting in the same transaction constitute disclosure? Right? If I'm submitting 2 votes in the same transaction, is that good enough?
Can you vote with SPO keys? So
yeah, but I did it. I voted in the last vote as Frog and as the DREP the same transaction.
But then how can you assume that
So
somebody else didn't just do it on your behalf? That can be done as well, and you just signed the transaction. If you're a huge company, I know that for a fact that some people already do it for ICC, right? You have an orchestrator of your transaction, and then the ICC sign the transaction because they approve what you have put in it, and then you submit it. You're the orchestrator, but you're not within the ICC, so you could just do the same thing with DREPs and SPO. It's not. The ledger doesn't make the difference.
So it looks like this section is just left there to possibly include some of this verbiage here and whatever they might receive feedback on from these workshops. I would imagine ultimately that this will be not included because I'm sure most of the feedback is going to be similar to ours.
If you can't enforce
it, you might as well just delete it.
Yeah.
If you can't enforce it, it shouldn't be in there. That's my opinion.
Yeah, governance is hard, but it's fun.
It fries my brain, actually. And I think a lot of newcomers, it will fry their brain too. The whole idea of this going on is just that there's Cardano, but it's all really confusing because, it's all full of all this DREP stuff that a lot of them don't understand. So,
I mean, them. Half the community just trying to pump some crazy shit, right? And make some money on some meme coin bullshit. And then you got, the other half in the trenches really doing the work.
So what I'm hearing is create meme coin.
No. Yeah.
I got Josh coin lined up. I can have
my point is everybody's definition of fun is different.
Yeah, that makes sense. But
yeah, I'm not too sure how I feel about that particular sentence. I see the word expected and I'm like,
Constitutional committee members are expected to have appropriate expertise to carry out the required. Is there a similar sentence for that for DREPs? DREPs are expected to have appropriate expertise? Because if they're going to require the CT,
what exactly is that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, was that mentioned anywhere before?
Hey, Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
How's it going?
Hey, Ryan.
Nice to meet you, Ryan.
What does appropriate expertise mean?
Right. What is appropriate to something that doesn't exist? This is brand new. There is no precedence. Well, I guess that's not necessarily true.
And I guess
But-
we're all qualified.
Well, maybe some specifications. I don't know.
Well,
Right.
and what do they do when they find out, hey, you're not meeting my expectations? You know, does
That's not
he immediately
expertise.
get kicked off? He was voted on to it, but hey, he's actually not the expert we wanted.
Are expected to have appropriate expertise. Are expected to not be retarded.
I mean, is that deliberately vague?
I don't know.
I think in this community of
it does
anarchists and
evolve.
individualists, you know, like if you can get elected, you've got expertise.
Yeah, you can't enforce it. If you're elected, you're elected. It's perceived that you have expertise. But
So it says required to carry out their required responsibilities, and then if you read above, their responsibility is to ensure government actions are consistent with the Constitution.
Right?
So anyone that can read, basically is qualified, I think.
Yeah.
But really, I mean, if that's all you have to do there, I'm not sure what other level of expertise that you could possibly have that would make you better at this job than anyone else.
I mean, the House members of the House of Burgesses and then later on the Virginia State Legislature, they were farmers. I mean, they weren't. I guess some of them were, you know, savvy politicians by that point, but most of them weren't.
Yeah.
I mean, you just can't expect people to be an expert at something that's brand new. And there's
But
members on the CC. I mean, they're not developers. They're not, I don't know, you know, they're just users in the space.
Can you imagine the creation of the United States? It was like a bunch of 20 and 30-year-olds, and they're like, all right, here's the rules. You can say whatever the fuck you want, and you get a gun. They're like, yes, you know, like that was the building of the United States.
And look how it turned out.
I think because we deviated away from the basic rules, those basic rules, you know, we went too far from them.
So you were focusing on the members having the appropriate expertise to carry out required responsibilities. We don't know what those responsibilities are necessarily. And you've got considering their past contributions and involvement in the Cardano blockchain ecosystem. So no newcomer can ever do that.
Right.
So
that last statement, you're right.
Can come in and do that.
Yep. I don't like that phrase at all. I agree with
Even
you 100%.
if they are qualified.
Yeah.
Every single thing that you see there isn't enforceable by anyone because the governance action that's meant to elect them cannot be voted by the CC.
So wait, does this mean if we elect somebody that's new to the ecosystem who's been here for some arbitrary short amount of time that it would be unconstitutional for them to sit? That's what
as this is written,
It doesn't say how long they've got to be there either, or what you've got to do. Is there milestones here? How can you say just a blasé statement?
Well, they're giving us arbitrary information that has no repercussions or enforceable action involved. So it's nothing. It's a nothing burger, the whole fucking paragraph.
I mean, you know, and I'm wondering, you know, like if we edit it down, you know, I can't count the number of paragraphs we've seen that are like that, you know, that basically should just be taken out, you know. And so I'm wondering how small we can make this. I'm wondering if anybody is doing that, you know, editing this down to like what's actually real.
That's not a bad idea.
I'm thinking about doing it myself.
Do it, Bob.
You know, and by the way, that link that you've got in the YouTube description, it doesn't give me this document that you've got up with the workshop questions.
If you open that link, that page should give you a link to this document or a Spanish version of it. Should. Let me double check and make sure I didn't bump that up.
Okay.
How many words is the Constitution, Chris?
I haven't done a word count. I'm sure somebody has.
It's one word.
How many words in the American Constitution?
4,543. It is 4 pages in its original form and 52 pages in a pocket-sized notebook. So in comparing this to the U.S. Constitution, I'm guessing it's probably about 10 times as big. Which is fucking stupid, right?
Yeah. Really.
Steve, can you see my
Once
cursor?
you've deleted half the nonsense,
Yeah.
you might find you've only got like 500.
So right
words.
here is where you would find the draft
Okay.
in English, and then for Spanish, it's over here.
Shit.
Oh, there was one thing I didn't want to do. I'm going to search this document for the word expected. "15 instances."
Who chat GPT this thing together? Wait, what did it say? Go back.
Go back to that last one.
No, let's.
Who are expected to periodically approve the Cardano blockchain budget? Oh, sorry. Okay. All right.
Not enforceable.
I mean, when they use the wording expected, that's all right with me. It explicitly says that it's unenforceable because they expect them to do it in a way.
That's true.
I was thinking the same.
Oh, yeah. So. So actually, yeah, if you don't do those things, then surely you just lose your title as DREP.
Yeah, but I mean, my problem with even having that in there is, as state cooperators, it's a permissionless system, right? It's all supposed to be permissionless. And by having something like that in the Constitution, that could potentially create the grounds for, people to call out other SPOs for acting in unconstitutional manners. Therefore, you're going to get a lot of bullshit saying any proposals they submit is unconstitutional. Like, there's so much fucking room in here for bureaucracy. It's stupid. And with that, as much money as we've got in the Treasury, it's inevitable. The shorter this document, the better off we're all going to be, I think.
So who wrote this first draft? Who wrote this draft?
Pretty sure IO people did it.
Chat GPT.
No, it's true. It's true. What did we say? What percent of this was written by AI?
There were accusations of that, and one of them I remember it was like 70 or 80%.
Oh, that was just with the first. What do you call the fucking beginning?
Well, I checked the first 4 paragraphs, and that said 31%.
Okay. The preamble was 60 to 70% is what one of the viewers
No way.
was last time. Yeah. Well, if you read the preamble, it's like, what is this fluff? It's like kumbaya and a fucking
Yeah. That's a lot of filler in there.
From an ICC perspective, I wouldn't vote against somebody who doesn't do that because it would still be constitutional for me because we expect them to do it, but they're not, in a way, they're not forced to do it.
Right.
Another gray zone.
Yeah,
I mean,
you can kind of tell that.
AI governance.
SPOs are expected to have a code of conduct. Does that mean I can't post Kermit opening up his butthole on Twitter anymore? I mean, like, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, it's tricky. You can tell that, either wasn't thoroughly reviewed by people that have a good understanding of how shit actually works here, or maybe the person that was in charge of writing it doesn't have a really good because telling people, giving them actions that are supposed to be enforceable, which are clearly not. Why is that even in there? We've already found, we're on page 7. We've already found 3 or 4 sections that can be entirely removed because it's just filler words that are, you know, non-enforceable, basically.
It could easily be just a starting point. Just here's a pile of shit. Like you do.
Yeah, but you think that
some of it might be good. Then you guys sort it out, fix it.
sending it out as a draft, that at least someone internally, especially if it came out of IO, there would have been looked over by quite a few brilliant people to say, oh no, this is bullshit, we can't enforce that, so just take it out.
Hmm.
Well, Steve mentioned
It does open it to, can we enforce? So are things worth making the effort to enforce?
This is true, but I think that will only arise if there's a problem where it's necessary to enforce whatever that may be.
So like when the Constitutional Committee is in a state of no confidence, then only parameter things can be done, right? No, not even that.
No, only the update committee governance section can be done when this is, when you're on a no confidence state. That's the only way to fix this, is to re-elect a brand new committee.
And that's parameter committee?
What's that?
Parameter committee that you're referring to?
No, the governance action update committee. Yeah, you cannot change the, you can't do any parameter modification on a no confidence state.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's time. Something just happened.
Snacks are
My family, my family.
fucking snacks.
They're planning my parents' 65th wedding anniversary 10 months in advance.
What are they doing?
I don't know. I was like, how hard is it to rent an Elks Club, you know? But they're doing something a little bit more. Kind of like this. It's kind of like this Constitution, you know. They're making it really complicated.
Tell them we said congratulations. 65 years. Wow. Holy
That's a
moly.
long time.
That is an incredibly long time.
I know. I didn't think they were going to make it in my 20s.
Okay, so like, is this the DREP section that we're reading now about DREPs? We passed the SPOs?
Yep.
Are DREPs expected to have some degree of expertise? You know, if we're going to sit there and you know what I'm saying? Like, they should kind of know what the hell they're talking about.
That's what what Chris says is right. You know, who's an expert in this shit?
Well, I mean, shit.
One code of conduct.
Should SBOs have expertise? You see what I'm saying? Like,
Right.
Fucking shit on SPOs don't even let they don't. Fuck ton pay people to run their own fucking pool.
What is a DREP code of conduct supposed to be, and how would you even create a universal version of that?
How would you enforce it is the thing. How do you enforce shit in a permissionless ecosystem? If you can't enforce it, why the fuck's it even there?
Well, it's not even enforcing it. There's just no purpose to it to begin with.
Well, you can't. I mean, like, what are you going to do? Like, if it is okay, all right, maybe a code of conduct item might be you shouldn't be a DREP and an SPO without being a public DREP in it or something like that, right? Like that could be foreseen, but if you can't enforce it, what is the point to it? The only point I see is to give somebody fucking leverage down the road to say an actor is acting unconstitutionally and therefore block funding. That's the only reason I can see that why it would be
powering a Karen.
But again, you know, you can set up a private stake pool and nobody knows who it is, and you can register privately. You know, so what? You know, do they want to change that eventually? And you know, and then it's like this is what I mean. You know, there's so much of this that just screams future bureaucratic regulation that's outside of the Constitution.
But like, so here's where I and I've brought this up a few times is, you know, governance dispute vectors. That's what these things create. It's just a vector for dispute down the road, like Kyle was saying, because who gets to define what is I mean, this is essentially an ethical code, right? So who determines what is ethical and what's not? I think it's
Right.
ethical to go hunting and put deer in my freezer, but some people don't think that. And would it be fair for me to make the rules on that, or for them? Like, who gets to make the rule? You know, I just think it just opens a door that when you open these kind of doors, you can't close them very easily.
I think you need some sort of cyclic derep constant voting thing, so much like you have periodic elections.
I think my issue with these things is they're up to the interpretation of delegators, right? Delegators are choosing a DREP and an SPO, but the DREPs and the SPOs are choosing the CC. And these are guidelines for the CC that the CC is going to go through, and they're going to say, is this constitutional? Is this not constitutional? So putting things that are here for delegators to interpret when they're not really going to be the ones, using it, I think is kind of a weird place for it. Like, I think having a code of conduct and all those things are fine. I just don't know if the Constitution is the place for it.
Right.
Are we safe? Like if the Constitution with these kind of vagaries is enacted, right, approved, is the community safe from? There's no legal jurisdiction where somebody could sue the shit out of us, is there? I mean,
Who are they going to sue?
well, that's what I'm wondering. Like there are groups. Like Kyle just said, Constitutional Committee. Like who are we safe from, like, getting involved in some outside jurisdiction just because somebody's got a legal, and a valid legal claim?
No, I mean, nobody's fucking safe when it comes down to it. I mean, we could have a rogue nation go after every DREP that they can find based on registered on-chain metadata if they wanted to. If they really wanted to get hostile, they could go after SPOs and node operators. Like, nobody's safe. I mean, I think, you want to mitigate risk rather than deploy it. Like, there's a whole section in here, questions in the workshops we really talked about, is that should we have contingency funds in case, legal action is pursued on the CC members, right? Like, I think that makes a lot of sense, I mean, but by the same token, keeping stake pool operators afloat and functional is a big deal. Now, we're decentralized enough that, one single nation going after their SPOs wouldn't break the network. But should SPOs not have a contingency fund if there was a global crackdown on what we do, right? Like, we're processing transactions for the network. That is the point of attack if you want to take down Cardano, right? Like, literally. And so should they not have a contingency fund? And that's not even in the Constitution, right? Like, there's no verbiage in there about protecting the integrity of SPO's ability to function and things like that. So this document, it's agenda. There's an agenda in this document, and I don't know if it's entirely encapsulating everything we need to cover.
Well,
but I mean, SPOs really aren't part of governance other than the fact that they're voting, right? Their operations of running the node is something different, but maybe
they're more like civil servants rather than, if you think of it in the real political terms. I don't know how you have it in America, but over here you'd have like MPs, but then you have civil servants who are kind of unbiased and do the work.
What I'm getting at, though, is let's say there was a global initiative to really put down node operators, right, and really to kind of go after them legally in every jurisdiction. There's no verbiage in the Constitution that says SPOs have a right, what I'm saying? That would allow them to go for the treasury. Yeah, we would have to operate within some said budget. If the budget's not there for that, like, you see what I'm saying? Like, that's a potential vector I see that is totally ignored in the Constitution.
Or like, all efforts should be made to, if in one country or whatever, like, is going to attack SPOs in particular, then all efforts should be made to protect those SPOs. Because
real quick, Daniel Sullivan has made a couple good points. So the first one was, I think a lot of the draft constitutions tended to start discussions in the constitutional workshops. Absolutely. And we don't know where some of these questions came from. And I'm sure, to Daniel's point here, so there was probably some folks scouring the community, see what people were talking about on Twitter and Facebook and Reddit and wherever else, and culling some of those questions out of the group. Now, this point he made here, it's funny because Adam made almost the exact same point at the workshop in Puerto Rico about that very topic.
Yeah.
And most people there were in agreement with him on that also.
Can we go back to the first comment that he made?
Yeah.
So this is good. But where do we take these discussions so they don't just die here on SpacePlace? Where do we take them so we can get actual changes made into
Some
the
sort of portal or something.
right?
Well, what I think the goal of this, Ant, is to really make notes, right? And to come up with a document of notes and then go back and refocus on that document or start a broader conversation in the community.
Yeah, where would you bring this modified document?
You'll probably find something in Fund 13 or whatever it is that's coming out later this month. Someone will have an idea and how to correlate all this.
There's still a few workshops, constitutional workshops going on, but those are like really heavily facilitated and moderated, right?
Yeah.
You know, it's not as freewheeling as those.
For this, no.
And there's nobody in these workshops is creating any kind of alternate version of the Constitution. It's just more a dissection of this.
Yeah, I think so. They're getting a lot of feedback. I mean, I know in Puerto Rico, that workshop, we gave them a ton of feedback. So
yeah, don't discuss anything specific. We discussed.
Oh no, I'm not.
No, I got to submit a report and all that shit. After I get paid, do whatever you want.
That was the secret to
That's
all.
That's
All
why
right, so Daniel's on a roll, so I'm going to share some more of his comments here. This is related to the attack vector in the legal fund.
That's hard to know, right? How are we supposed to know all the laws and all the applicable jurisdictions?
Yeah. Charles talked about in one of his recent live videos of workshops for facilitate community engagement to write an acceptable constitution. However, it is also possible that an entirely rogue constitution written outside of all the workshops gains community traction and ends up being the actual document approved by SPOs and DREPs. That's also very true.
Then it's not a rogue constitution anymore. It's the Constitution.
Yeah.
That's probably what I think we need to do as a community is we need to come to a broader consensus if this is good enough, or, you know, maybe that's what we need to do is trim it down and to say and present a separate constitution.
Congratulations, Daniel.
Yeah. Congrats, man.
That is
awesome.
a long, long journey from San Diego to Argentina.
Yeah, Kyle will be there, I guess.
Yeah, I'll see you there, Daniel. I'll be in Argentina.
Oh,
I'm thinking about the having the section in there about not wanting to directly violate laws within applicable jurisdictions. And the more I think about it, the more I don't like it, because I think there's time and place for civil disobedience, right? Even within like a blockchain. So like if the world decides to crack down on, you know, all cryptocurrencies are illegal. Okay, I guess now we're breaking the law, right?
Well, this goes back to Andrew's comment where he says the Constitution he thinks should just be one line. Cardano has the right to exist. You know?
I love that.
It's fucking awesome, dude.
I think it's like, I mean, if you think of, because you're with the Constitution, you're really talking to the CC members because they're the ones who enforce it. So anything that you want the CC to enforce, I mean, that's the Constitution, right?
Nothing. We don't want them to enforce shit.
Well, we want them to say certain shit's not unconstitutional when they come in for treasury money, right?
Protocol parameters too.
Or protocol param changes. You know, somebody comes in and puts a proposal to make
Isn't that based on the vote?
To make K 10 million. Yeah, but still, like, we want a filter in place. No one in their fucking right mind should ever propose K is 10 million.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, that wouldn't pass in a vote.
Maybe it would. Who knows? Maybe you got some
What?
Hey, man.
And we're all fucked. I mean, there's nothing we can do.
Think about it. Really understands what K going to 10 million would do. You and I do, because we're going to have to spin up thousands of fucking nodes. Like, that's bullshit, right? Like, it's unsustainable. But, you know, you get the right person with the right popular fucking narrative, and they can promote it. Go ahead, Mike.
Vector of attack.
I think like, so one example, go ahead.
Yeah, I just going to explain real quick. Let's say you toss the CC from enforcing anything. All you have is the SPOs and the DREPs, which means that the DREPs by themselves could ratify protocol parameters. I'm the attacker. What I would do with enough stake, I would wait. I would wait for the self-healing system to go to go stable, which means that I would wait for a lot of D-reps to go inactive eventually, and I would wait for the right time, to put my vote in with my governance action at the very, very limit of an epoch, which I did on testnet, and just put all my votes all of a sudden and barely give 1 minute to everyone to counter my vote. And it will pass. And then I would be able to do anything on chain with no restrictions from that specific point, because when you're inactive, you're not calculated. So if the activity goes down enough, then I might have enough state to be able to do something bad to the chain.
Right. You're looking for that window where their vote is no longer automatically a passive no. It's just an abstain, and then you're going in and submit.
That's exactly what I did on testnet against IOG, because they had those. Well, to go against me, they made a D-rep. They made a specific D-rep with crazy amount of delegation to make sure that I couldn't do that kind of stuff on testnet, and I just waited. I just waited for them to go inactive, and at the very moment they forgot about this D-rep, I was there, I was ready, and that's what I did. I jumped in with a crazy governance action, and I made it pass because there was no CC to stop me. When you have a CC, then you have a passive no that's always there, and that's the point in a way, because if they don't vote, it acts like a no, and you have that constant barrier there to stop people from doing stupid shit. And if they agree with it, then of course they follow the Constitution. But unless we have something better, I think that's just the right way to do it.
So I have an example of something we could use the CC to enforce, right? So let's say we have this major vote, and Binance comes in and they vote with 1 billion ADA of users ADA they don't own it, they're just custody on somebody's behalf, right? And let's say that's enough to sway the vote. So there's going to be a lot of like controversy around that, right? Like Binance changed the vote with other people's ADA. So you could have in the Constitution, thou shalt not ratify a proposal that was voted on with other people's ADA by an exchange. And the CC could just say, oh, this happened, and use on-chain metrics and their best judgment and say, okay, it looks like this was voted on at Binance and they don't own that ADA. And we're not.
Yeah, but how do you?
Can the network determine between?
Yeah, how do you?
Right,
How,
you have to use their
They
judgment.
own it or not.
how do you know that some ADA is self-custodial? Now, it's in the Constitution that you shouldn't be voting with other people's ADA. I think that's in there, right? Like that's written in there somewhere, I believe. But then how do you enforce that? What is the enforcement? Does that just mean Binance can't come and put any proposals in because the CC would deem all their proposals unconstitutional if they were voting with other people's ADA?
Right. So another side of that, right, is like if you use a protocol like Optum and you buy a whole bunch of stake power, right, and then you use that to vote, that's still technically voting with other people's ADA. So I'm not making the argument that you should or shouldn't have that in there. It's just saying as it could be something that you could try to use the Constitutional Committee to enforce if you wanted that.
But then if I make a governance action in good faith and Binance vote for it, then I would be penalized because there's something in the Constitution that holds them from doing that.
That's another vector. That's the opposite side vector. What if I self-custody like 10 ADA and I vote with that and make some big proposal unconstitutional because I voted on it with other people's ADA, right? Like something.
Yeah, it could be a bad idea. I'm just throwing it out there. So
that's not a bad idea. It's just hard. It's hard to enforce that on chain. That's all.
I mean, I think it's a lot more enforceable than a lot of these other things, though. Like a lot of the word expected that goes around there, like, codes of conduct and stuff. Like there's not really any way you can enforce them.
Yeah,
you can't fire a D-rep if they don't have a code of conduct. So, yeah.
I totally agree with that.
But exchanges have different addresses, though, don't they?
Not necessarily. What do you mean? Like you could have one omnibus address where
When you send money to an exchange, you're always sending it to it's not like a typical wallet address. See, I don't think there is something different.
no, it's like one big ass pot. Like if you go look at like Kraken's stake address, you see
yeah. Oh no, I've seen that.
It
Yeah,
almost works like a
data,
treasure hunt.
everybody's fucking NFTs who's ever sent an NFT to the exchange. Like you can see it all.
But if there was a way to differentiate between exchanges and stuff like that, like if there was I don't know, something.
Well, they typically have enterprise wallets, but I don't think that it's as simple as going to a blockchain explorer and identifying them. It may be,
But you could say, yeah, if that's
but then they could argue the point like, yeah, we own this, and you know, it's hard to
which they
prove otherwise
technically,
unless you
they
get their
technically
book.
do if they got the keys. So,
Yeah, yeah. We have the keys. We own all this.
yeah. There is a saying, I can't remember what it is. I mean, that's your big. To me, that's the thing that sticks out the most. Binance already did it with stake pools. Like, why can't they do it here?
So are they
I mean,
saying
I've done
that?
it, right? Like I control my family's ADA because nobody else knows how to do their shit. And friends. Like I've got a handful of people that I ran their shit for. And it's not any different than Binance. In that sense.
Yeah, you have to consider that D-reps, in a way, they vote with other people's data too. So
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny. Put something in the Constitution that makes D-reps unconstitutional.
Oh, yeah.
What is this 67% thing? What are they saying here?
What do you mean?
So,
Oh, I see it.
what is the satisfying a threshold of not less than 67% of then active voting stakes? So is that basically consensus is 67%?
67% of all stake delegated to D-reps needs to vote yes in order for a constitutional amendment to occur.
Yeah. I think that should be a lot higher just because.
No, that already is. That's high as shit. If you look at just Catalyst, we had what, 3 or 4 billion stake registered in Catalyst, and only half of them, like 25% or less than. No shit.
10.
500 million. Yeah, about 12% or something of the registered stake, or 5 to 12% of the registered stake in Catalyst was voting. 1% or so of the total delegation or less than. So to have 67% of the active state vote yes, that means you would have to have 67%. Well, I guess maybe not 67% because the numbers don't translate because the stake's not weighted or distributed evenly or proportionally amongst D-reps. But yeah, you'd have to have all the D-reps or most of them voting, right? Or at least, a significant portion of the large.
You also have to know that all of the no confidence votes are always going to count as no. So if there's like a solid 10% of no confidence at any given time, you have to work against that.
Yeah, there's the always abstain D-rep, right? That's that guy. He's going to vote no on everything. And if he gets more than 25, 30% of the vote, well, 33% here, then they'll never have a constitutional.
Sure, but they're taken out of quorum, right? So those always abstain are not counted. It's counted in the active delegation, not the total ADA.
we thought about it in the because I was part of the governance parameter committee who ended up with this number.
Mhm.
And the reason why it's so high is because we consider the fact that it's a self-healing system. So if you end up not doing anything for too long or not participating, as what happened to Catalyst, for example, you will end up not being calculated in that amount. So only the active voting stakes will be considered in that. So only participating D-reps and active D-reps will be calculated in this. So if you ask for 67% of only the active D-reps, then it might seem like a good number to me.
If I vote abstain, does that consider me active?
No.
Okay, even though I'm actively abstaining.
Yes, exactly. You don't get into that calculation if you abstain.
Okay, got it. Okay.
I have a question for the
Either
crowd.
yes or no. If I'm voting yes or I'm voting no.
Exactly. Only yes and no.
Okay.
I have a question for the crowd.
That seems wrong to me. Like, I think there should be a difference between a no vote and an abstain. But
There's a clear distinction. What they're saying is that if you abstain, you're not even factored in that 67% calculation. What it's saying is that 67% of everybody voting either yes or no has to vote yes in order for a constitutional amendment to.
But
right, okay, that's just silly.
if you go inactive, though, you have a 20 epoch grace period where all of your votes are being counted as no. during that
Yep.
20 epoch grace period, are you part of that 67? Well, the
Yes.
opposite of that 67.
Yes, you are. That's
Yeah.
the hardest part to understand.
Yeah, you have to jump that hurdle. You have to outvote the people that just go stagnant for 20 epochs until their vote just goes straight to abstain or just doesn't count any longer.
Yeah, but it's going to happen in a way. And
Of course.
There's an argument that abstain can be a no as well, though.
no, yeah, that's the part I was going to explain, and that's the hardest part probably to understand about governance, because voting abstain is not the same thing as abstaining from voting. Abstaining from voting, you are seen by the system as a passive no, even though you didn't vote. But when you vote abstain, then you are seen as not participating in governance, and you don't get into the calculation. And
One's
that
an
is,
active voter, the other one is not.
Because if the proposal is for change and you don't vote, that means you're essentially saying I'm happy with the status quo, which is a no to that change.
for as long as you're active, yes, exactly.
For DREPs.
Yeah.
Question though, is that 67%? Is that the actual value, or is that just a constitutional minimum? Because I had written down 75% as the on-chain value for a constitution parameter change.
No, the Constitution is 75. Yes.
Yeah, okay, that's right. So this is just a constitutional minimum is 67%. So the actual value is even higher than that.
I don't even know why they put it there, because they could have just use it as a guardrail if they wanted to. Oh no, they can't. Never mind what I said. Forget. Yeah, so the reason why they would have to put it there is because you cannot include it as a guardrail, because when you use the guardrail flag on a constitution governance action, it's to change the guardrail script, which is, it might be tricky to explain.
Like a self-reference thing?
Yeah, you can change the guardrail script, and you have to mention the hash, but not for the same reason as for the other governance action. If you mention the hash on the constitution change governance action, it's to change the guardrail script itself with the new hash that you're providing, instead of just providing it as a guardrail for another governance action.
So this is actually an example of something that the CC can enforce, right? So if somebody proposes, hey, let's change the thing to like 51%, the CC can say, hey, the Constitution says no less than 67%, and they can all vote no. So that's a good example.
You cannot enforce the guardrail script on the Constitution change governance action. So the only way to do that would be a human intervention. Sorry.
Cool.
Jane has been in here for a little bit. What's up, Jane?
Hey, Chris, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thanks. Sorry I'm so late.
No, it's okay. How was your day?
It was pretty busy, like all of yours, I'm sure. I don't know if I'm saying the same thing that's already been said, but from what I read, voting abstain means that the stake doesn't count in the vote percentage requirements. So if there's 67% of the vote of the then active voting stake, it would not include, at least from what I read, the abstain votes.
Good.
Is that what you're all saying already?
Well, no, we weren't sure, I think, was where we were with abstaining.
Yeah,
That makes sense.
That was something that I read, and
that's how it should be.
You know, it's if you delegate to abstain, the stake doesn't count in the vote percentage requirements, because it has to be
That is correct.
67% of the then active votes. So
Right. Abstain is like, I don't care.
Yeah.
So I don't know even.
Right. Yeah, either of those. Yeah.
Right. So if there's 37 billion whatever staked ADA right now, and if half of them, 18.5 billion, don't vote or let's say vote abstain rather than don't vote, because I know there's a difference. So then out of the 18.5 billion, you'd need 2/3 basically of the active voting stake, rather than 2/3 of the 37 billion. At least that's the way I read it. And I'm still in very early review of all this stuff, which, so I could be wrong about it, but, and even this particular document is great, which I don't think I've seen before, with all these workshop questions and stuff like that. Is that something that you all prepared?
No, if you want it, Jane, there's a link in the description on YouTube and in our tweet earlier on X. That goes to where this is, and this is hosted by
Is that
Intersect.
in the chat? Oh, is that the form
Okay.
in the chat? Oh, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I've been like trying to bookmark all these different documents, and there's just so much going on, which is wonderful to see, but it's just hard to keep track of.
Yeah, earlier we were talking about, so many things in this document make sense, but not necessarily for a constitution.
Yeah, I
And-
remember at the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Jane. Go ahead.
I was just going to say that I got the feeling from the first YouTube session that you guys did on this that there's a real question of style of constitution. Like, this is a really technical document, what's been proposed, and it doesn't have a lot of things that are, maybe more aspirational. And should we have, a fixed supply of ADA, 45 billion? Should we not be able to burn? Should we not be able? A lot of those things aren't in there yet. And so the final document, which it says, could take any form, including having no constitution, is up for discussion and debate. But
That's a good point, especially the amount of ADA in circulation. We've always known it as the 44 whatever billion, whatever it was.
I think Mike's going to issue a correction here.
Oh,
No,
right.
not a correction, just
Okay.
just a statement.
That should not be changed. That should be like
Okay,
America.
so
You have the right to bear arms, kind of.
these parameters are not updatable from the protocol parameter change governance action. It is like a permanent thing.
So
If
it can't be done anyway, basically.
if you want to change it, you would have to change the software. You would need automatically the approval of SPO, so they would have to get the update
so then,
before you could even think about casting a hard fork on that. So
So
if you
then,
don't, yeah.
Mike, should they be part of the Constitution in your opinion?
They already are.
So are they there even if they're not in it? In other
Well,
words, so we have a constitution that we have to vote on, right? And if these things that are like part of it automatically and would require a hard fork to do something else, then would it make sense to put them in the constitution?
I personally don't think so, because honestly, like, let's say it happens, right? I mean, like, you would need at first the approval of a huge majority of SPOs to just get the update of the software, right? And then after that, you would also need the 3 governance bodies to vote yes on the hard fork initiation of that upgrade. And if you get to this point, I mean, you already have the almost totality of the community approval for this. So why would you put something against it in the Constitution?
No, I'm not saying put something against it. I'm
No,
saying
but a
something
ruling. Whatever what happens with this and the hard fork and the updates, you have to consider the fact that the community approved it already, because that's the SPOs are the base layer of our entire blockchain in a way. Because but that's my opinion. You could put it there, but it's just going to be there.
I totally agree. I'm just asking as a question, is there harm in putting it in the Constitution?
No, I don't think so.
So if there's no harm in putting it in, but there could be confusion in leaving it out, that's my question. And
I think by the sounds of it, though, if people are going to change it, they're not going to give a shit about the Constitution anyway. If they're if they're going to push a new update and try and force SPOs to take it off.
It's important because the CC is going to have to vote against it if it's in the Constitution. And you as much as you might get the update and cross every steps you have to cross to be able to get to this point, the CC is going to vote against it because you've put something in the Constitution text that forces them to vote against your governance action to trigger the hard fork that you need for it to be implemented.
So why would that be a problem? In other words, if you said there's a 45 billion supply of ADA that's fixed, and that's part of the Constitution, and the Constitutional Committee gets a proposal to burn ADA or to change the number,
they would vote against
they
it.
could easily reject that as unconstitutional, right?
Yeah. Yes.
So I'm just wondering. I don't have all the answers. I only have a lot of questions. I definitely don't have, the knowledge that you all have on a lot of these technical issues. And where it hampers me, and I mentioned this last time, and Chris, you were so nice to say that it doesn't matter that you don't know these things, but like I asked a question about how often are there going to be votes? And
That was something I wanted to know actually, and I didn't know. So
and
I'm in the same boat as you.
yeah, and like, is there a way to limit? And Adam Dean, responded, and he said, well, we can look at, the votes are happening at Epic End, and we can look at what the vote tallies are, but we can't look at whether or not there are like 2 or 5 or 100 proposals off that have been submitted, and we can't really regulate that. So that's like something that I didn't know, and that affects,
To
Well,
me,
you can. Sorry. Yeah, you can. You can. There's a way. Yeah, you can. You can track all that. It's not a problem. You can track every single governance action, but you can't control how many they submit unless you change the deposit. That's the main purpose of the deposit, is to control the flow of governance action that you see on chain. If there's not enough, you can lower it. If there's too much, you raise it. That's the main goal of this deposit, which is,
why can't you have it in a cyclic kind of motion, like every so and so epochs you have a load of proposals to vote on, so then everyone knows they can all go to the same place at one time and it's done. The same as D-reps. You delegate to a D-rep, but every year or whatever, then you have to vote for it. You have to find another D-rep or stick with the same one, like you do in sort of current
I would
politics.
actually be in favor for
You
something
can
like
force.
that would specify voting season. So basically, any proposal that was submitted outside of voting season, unless it was like an emergency parameter update or something
It's a
like
fair playing field. Everyone's already looking. Everyone's there. Everyone's talking about it.
that. So basically,
Where they
anything,
all are. Go and
anything
look.
submitted outside those boundaries would be unconstitutional.
And
Unless it was like an emergency parameter update or something.
yeah, and that
Okay,
makes
but
sense.
the request for treasury withdrawals, that's the reason, right? The low bar of entry to make a proposal would just open up a floodgate of people wanting money, and
Yeah.
that was, Mike convinced me of that back in December when we were doing the DREP thing, that's a huge thing because it's overwhelming in catalysts, the number of people that show up for small amounts of money.
that's crazy.
And
it is the lowest threshold
It
of all
would
the
be as
proposals,
crazy
too.
as catalysts, though. I don't think they're.
yeah.
I
I
think it would be the same thing.
I would say that I'm personally against that, and the reason would be that if you have a voting period, then we would be like, our workload at that small period of time is going to be insanely high compared to just like when you can constantly submit governance actions. Then we can audit them on a case by case as they go on chain. But if you make a specific period for that, then the overflow is going to be insane. And not saying it's hard, but I'm saying it's hard. But
You're right. You're right. People are going to come in. You're going to have to deal with probably 100 proposals at once. And it's just going to be too much.
that's a lot. Yes.
But maybe that you can also limit that, though. If you meet a certain threshold, like if
Yeah, but then who can get to put a proposal on chain? How do you filter that? It's a permissionless system. So if I restrain this to 30 action, then only the knowledgeable people who are able to stick their governance action super quickly on chain, they're going to be,
So
That's a vector. Yeah.
another thing we want to consider is what happens if we have to do like an emergency parameter change, right? Like something gets jacked
well,
up.
that would be a separate issue. That would be a force majeure kind of action. Surely you'd have some kind of in the state of like everyone knows, but some bad shit's happened. We've turned into Solana and stopped working. Obviously, you need to make it work again.
But then you just kind of move the problem to like defining what's an emergency and what's not. And then some people will say, well, this proposal is an emergency. We need to vote on it now.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always too much ambiguity there.
I kind of like how it's. I enjoy how it's liquid at the governance action lifetime, and you just got to vote as they come. I think that's my
You would
preferred
need
way.
some sort of push thing in wallets or something, or like,
Yeah.
I don't know, because if there is an emergency, or well, not necessarily emergency, in just normal proposals, you need to know what your D reps now thinking, because when you voted for them, you need to know what they're.
That's actually one of the reasons why the enactment is not done instantly with the ratification of a governance action. Let's say I ratify minimum transaction fee to 1 million ADA, then you would see that nobody can submit anything anymore because it costs 100 million, for example, to submit something on chain. Then it would take an epoch between the ratification of this till it gets enacted. So you would have an epoch to an epoch window to be able to change it back to what it was before the change happens on chain. I don't think I explained this right. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It was hard to follow, and I kind of nodded towards the end.
There's a delay. So when a governance action passes, the application of it on the ledger is done one epoch later.
Right. Yeah. As the same with changing SPOs kind of thing.
SPOs is 2 epoch.
Oh, is that?
Oh yeah, that's worth mentioning, right?
It's one epoch, really, because it's you wait to the end of the epoch, and then it's a whole epoch. And then
the vote itself, for example, that's something worth mentioning. When you move delegation from a DREP, it's calculated at the very same epoch boundary. But when you move your stake away from an SPO because you don't like what the decisions that he made, the calculation is going to be done for 2 epochs later. So you will still be counted as part of his stake for the 2 next epoch.
Well, up to 2 epochs, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. That was off topic. I'm sorry, guys.
I thought it was on topic.
So is that where we talk? Well, we're kind of going technical guardrail modifications. Are we still on about this?
Yeah, I think I noticed, Chris. You asked the question last time, like, why do we even have guardrails on a constitution, and should we have guardrails? And I mean, there's so many different forms that a constitution can take, and I've eventually come around to feeling like maybe they're not called guardrails, and maybe there's not this separate guardrails document, but I think I'm slightly more tolerant of technical specifications for some of the really basic things, like the high security risks, like burning ADA, like whatever, being part of this Constitution more so than I would be in like the United States Constitution or some other form, just because blockchain is so much more technical, and it could eliminate a lot of problems to have some of those really basic things specified. To the extent that they are specified in the current IC interim constitution, I don't know. I mean, basically, I look at the interim constitution as it was designed to implement SIP 1694, and that's why there's so much overlap between them, because whoever came up with 1694, which was done under the SIP rules and approved, it's very technical, and so beyond a lot of my ability to understand. But all kinds of parameter things and language I don't understand, but a lot of that was then turned into the interim constitution, which, to my understanding, is the law right now, even though it limits like the types of votes that can be done to certain categories. But it is what we have right now. It's already quote unquote passed. So now we have to decide how much of that goes into the final draft, if at all. And so, I mean, when I first came to this process, I was thinking of things like diversity and inclusion and not wanting to do like certain things, and I guess my view has changed a little bit to where I think we might need to address in the Constitution some of these technical things. Which ones entirely, I'm not sure.
But that's the thing. You talk about technicality. Should we really be more focused on principles rather than technicality? Because
if it was anything other than blockchain, it would be. But if we just have an aspirational constitution, this is just my opinion for whatever little it's worth. If we just have, don't be bad, do this, do that, and we don't have any technical parameters, we're going to put a lot more burden on the community as a whole to decide things that maybe they are not qualified to decide. And I'm not saying that I'm not qualified to decide a lot of these things. I would delegate my vote to USPOs and you more knowledgeable people to decide a lot of those things. But it just seems really like burdensome. And like, if we as a community as a whole already know, like, we do or do not want to change the fixed supply of ADA. We do or do not want to burn ADA. We do or do not want to, I don't know. Some of these things, it seems to me, would not be harmful to have in the basic draft. If it would be harmful to not have them and it wouldn't hurt anything to have them, then I'm in favor of having them, just to try to limit the areas of dispute. Because I come from the dispute resolution point of view, and there's going to be so much of that's going to be required to be off chain, and it's going to be, eventually, from what I read, maybe more of it can be on chain, but there's just so many. There's just so many issues that could be avoided potentially if we have them addressed. And if they don't hurt, but they could possibly help, then I'm probably going to be in favor of them.
This is exactly why the Bill of Rights came to exist with, as a kind of companion document to the United States Constitution, because you had the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists, and the Anti-Federalists were concerned primarily with overreaching power of the government itself, but they didn't like that there was no Bill of Rights.
Exactly.
And so that's how that came to be. And we could end up seeing a document, I wouldn't call it a Bill of Rights, but something akin to that, and in nature or intention.
Yeah, exactly.
You Americans have an advantage here, because in the UK we don't have a written constitution. So, and this is something you guys talk about a lot. Whether it's guns or whatever. Freedom of speech. I don't know.
Yeah.
But it is something that you guys have and debate quite a lot. So. Yeah,
isn't the Magna Carta still your kind of rule of law there?
Like, I've read the Magna Carta. All that was to say the king just can't just do whatever he likes. That's all it really was.
Here's one of the guardrails that I looked at also that I'm curious your thoughts on. So one of the guardrails says Treasury withdrawals must be consistent with the community-approved Cardano blockchain ecosystem budgets. So where is this budget referred to in SIP 1694, and what and how does it get established and approved? I don't know. And that's a big deal, because Treasury withdrawals having to be consistent with budgets, and there's no budgets,
So there's a statement earlier in the Constitution, or one of the questions, and it was, should the budget process be further, outlined in the Constitution, what that means, and then should we define who administers the budget in the Constitution? So,
okay, yeah, these are good questions, I see.
Well, yeah, but I don't think we should define anybody to administer the budget in the Constitution. That's a centralized grant of power that instills an institution for all of eternity in Cardano. and I'll burn this shit to the ground if that's the way we're going. You know,
And that's forever changing as well, though.
I agree with that, Kyle. I feel that too. So if we don't want, right now, it's in the interim constitution, right? So if that's something that we don't want to be in the final constitution, then we have to deal with that.
Well, no, I think it's not in the interim constitution, but you know, that was one of the workshop topics, but there was never a counter for, I don't know.
I read it, actually. I read it as part of the guardrails. That's why I'm bringing it up, because I don't, maybe it was in 1694, but I thought it was in the guardrails. That it said Treasury withdrawals must be consistent with the community-approved Cardano blockchain ecosystem budget.
No, it's a guardrail.
Does that mean-
Oh, sorry.
Does that mean if you know the DREPs vote to pass the Treasury withdrawal and it's not in the budget, the CC should vote no? Is that how that would be interpreted?
Yeah, there we go. You got it up on the screen now. Treasury withdrawals must not be ratified until there's a community-approved Cardano budget then in effect, pursuant to a previous on-chain governance action agreed by the DREPs with a threshold of greater than 50% of active voting stake. So that's what I was referring to. And if what does that mean?
That means you filter the entirety of all governance action treasury withdrawal into a budget, which I
Right.
believe is just a pile of shit. But I'm sorry. I shouldn't say those kind of things. I'm not allowed to say that anymore, right? I mean, but I'm going to say it anyway. And that's fucking shit.
Okay, so I like this guardrail. The budget for the Cardano Treasury must not exceed the net change limit for the Cardano Treasury's balance per period of time. Now, I think that's reasonable because I don't like verbiage that says the budget is finite in a given period. And the reason I don't like that is I really, really, really think we should explore setting up like a decentralized sales channel where we can pay commissions based on revenue directly from transaction volume that goes into the treasury. You see what I'm saying? And that can't be capped. That's based on sales activity. So you don't want to cap it, but if it's based on treasury balance per period of time, that would fall within that threshold.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And
How
I
many transactions are drip drops doing at the moment?
What's that?
How many transactions are drip drops doing at the moment?
No, I mean, no, negligible. Like if you look at the transaction fees that we need to sustain the trade, we got to grow transaction volume 100x, man. Anything that we're doing in our own little pond is bullshit. I'm talking about incentivizing massive sales channels to go out and win big businesses that are going to settle on the chain and incentivizing them in the right way, right? Like, so you got professional sales channels already out there that we could tap right into, you know, whether it be bars or, you know, various, you know, rep firms that are already talking to a lot of customers. And if you give them incentive to get commissions on TX revenue from TX volume they generate, then that could be really powerful. And and don't get me wrong, it's got to be fleshed out and it may or may not be something that's viable, but I don't want to shoot ourselves in the foot from being able to do that.
So
No, I agree. I think Treasury-02 is good, and but it's totally different from saying like, just a general thing that the Treasury withdrawals have to be consistent with a community-approved Cardano blockchain
So-
ecosystem budget.
can somebody define net change limit for me? Is that in the time
like-
period? What are they?
The treasury may not be
A surplus or
depleted
deficit.
X% in Y time is my interpretation of that.
We're balanced budget, no surplus, no deficit, I guess, really. That's how I interpret it. But I think there might be a loophole here. Is the period of time, is that defined anywhere? I thought it was 1 year, but I thought that maybe that's an assumption.
Yeah, like there were just there were two really fundamental differences of definition there, and I'm
You would
not sure.
assume that's in SPO terms. That's an epoch.
Oh wait, the DREPs must define a net change limit.
Oh,
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Okay. So here's a loophole,
Chris.
right? So the budget is there, and that's a requirement that there has to be a budget for a treasury action. But if the period of time is not defined, Who's to stop anyone from proposing a budget for one day? This is, or like 1 week. This is Cardano's budget for the next 1 week, and we're going to vote on this treasury action within that budget.
2 people vote on it, and it's done. Yeah.
I mean, that would technically, if you're trying to get it past the CC, that technically makes it constitutional, as long as you call this, a budget for whatever time period. If there's no guardrails for the, the time period has to be, greater than X epochs or 1 year or something like that.
Yeah, and I have not seen anything that define that period of time
It
yet.
should be formulaic, depending on the amount, though. Potentially, you can have.
Yeah. And those kinds of questions I think are important for the community to be able to vote on.
By the way, Kyle and I have a business meeting to get into in 5 minutes, so I hate to cut this short, but I want to go breathe some fresh air.
I got 1 minute, Chris.
What time is it? Oh shit! It is 1 minute.
Yeah, it's almost 5. On the East
So
Coast.
you guys can keep going if you guys want, or we can shut it down and continue. How much more do we have to go through in the Constitution, Chris? Are we kind of
At this point, I'm just kind of going around looking for specific topics that are coming up.
okay? Have we been through the entire doc yet, or
No.
okay?
Yeah, we're nearly towards the end, actually.
All right, everybody watching, you get a homework assignment. I want you to find 1 to 5 sentences that need to just get scratched out of this motherfucker.
And
then-
I've shared it on AdaPulse as well, so AdaPulse followers can do the same. You've got the link to the document; you can go through it. So
let's get this down to 5 pages, and then we'll see if it makes sense, and if it's good, we'll push that sucker.
I bet you'll find that in the end, it's just going to be Cardano has the right to exist.
Automatically throw out anything that's not enforceable.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, you can't enforce it. Just why are we creating ambiguity there?
Or
That's a
something
good
Thanks a lot.
too.
But note that whether something should be tried to make enforceable as well, I think.
Well, thank you all for hosting this. This is important stuff. I really appreciate your time.
Thank
Yeah,
you all.
no, I understood a lot more now. Like I
so.
was saying, newcomers, it's tough getting their head around like the whole DREP thing. But I think if someone was, newcomers.
Hey, give me just 1 minute. I'm in another meeting. I'm wrapping it up right now. Thank you.
Hey, thanks a lot, guys.
Okay, thanks everybody. Catch up with you.
See you guys. See you guys next week.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.
You guys rock.
I was gonna say, Jane, if you want to